Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation, a new modern economic theory, and what is missing. Let's explore. Yes, this is a very interesting article here from Bloomberg, which rarely allows me in to see their articles since I don't have an account. But nonetheless, this is something that is an interesting read that talks about everything we've learned about modern economic theory is wrong, according to Ole Peters, who is a theoretical physicist in the UK. And he claims to have the solution. And we're going to look at this article and see what is missing in that solution, which I think is crucial. But anyways, it brags about upending 3 centuries of economic thought. And the proposition is about as outlandish as it sounds. Everything we know about modern economics is wrong. Well, the thing is, you could have asked me. It does seem like we've had it wrong for a long time. It's probably been wrong for the past 3 centuries, but I don't think this theory that he has is the solution. And he says that he can prove it, yea, though he has no degree in economics. And he is not an ordinary person. He's a physicist by training. His theory draws on research done in close collaboration with the late Nobel laureate Murray Gell-Mann, father of the quark. He's also one over 2 noted thinkers in the world of finance, Nassim Nicholas Taleb and Michael Mauboussin, not to mention the groundswell of enthusiastic supporters in the Twitter sphere. His beef is that all too often economic models assume something called Ergodicity, that is, the average of all possible outcomes of a given situation informs how any one person might experience it. But that's often not the case, which Peters says renders much of the field's predictions irrelevant in real life. In those instances, his solution is to borrow math commonly used in thermodynamics to model outcomes using the correct average. If Peters is right, and it's a pretty ginormous if, the consequences are hard to overstate. Simply put, keyword being simply, his fix would upend 3 centuries of economic thought and reshape our understanding of the field as well as everything it touches, from risk management to income inequality, and that's another key word there, to how central banks set interest rates and even the use of behavioral economics to fight COVID-19. The problem is that much of the academic economics has gone off the rails. Peters, lead researcher of the London Mathematical Laboratory Economics Program, wrote in an email, "We can trace back the reasons for this to the 17th century, but it's important first of all to state clearly that something is not the way it should be, and that any statements coming from economics must be evaluated carefully because they may be based on flawed reasoning." Peters is far from the first to play the part of the outsider coming to bravely save economics from itself. There's even a joke among economists that every few years a physicist stumbles into the field, looks at the math, declares that none of it makes sense, and then tries in vain to fix it. He concedes his ideas haven't gotten very far with actual economists. Many have either rejected them outright or dismissed them as nothing more than a willful misunderstanding of the facts. And here we see an image of Ole Peters with a Murray Gell-Mann in Santa Fe. Yet, despite what dyed-in-the-wool economists may think, he's developed a wide and devoted online following since his paper, The Ergodicity Problem in Economics, was published late last year. Next month, his institute will hold a virtual conference on all things related to Peters' work, from explainers to implications for fields as varied as finance and medicine. It has already attracted over 500 attendees from around the world, even a few economists. Peters takes aim at expected utility theory, the bedrock that modern economics is built on. It explains that when we make decisions, we conduct a cost-benefit analysis to try to choose the option that maximizes our wealth. And to me, that seems pretty solid. The problem, Peters says, is that if the model fails to predict how humans actually behave because the math is flawed, expected utility is calculated as an average of all possible outcomes for a given event. What this misses is how a single outlier can, in effect, skew perceptions. Or put another way, what you might expect an average has little resemblance to what most people experience. Consider a simple, there's that word again, coin flip game, which Peters used to illustrate his point. Starting with $100, your bankroll increases 50% every time you flip heads. But if the coin lands on tails, you lose 40% of your total. Since you're just likely to flip heads as tails, it would appear that you should, on average, come out ahead if you played enough times because your potential payoff each time is greater than your potential loss. In economics jargon, the expected utility is positive, so one might assume that taking the bet is a no-brainer. Yet, in real life, people routinely decline the bet. Paradoxes like these are often used to highlight irrationality or human bias in decision-making. But to Peters, it's simply because people understand it's a bad deal. So here's how it's charted out. With an increased payouts for winning flips and a 50-50 chance of landing on heads each time, the game is a loser. So flip number one, heads, 50% gain, you earn $150. Flip two, you lose 40%, that's $90. Flip 3, $135, and goes forth and so forth down to where you get after 50-50 shot, you end up with 60%, $59.05 with $100 payroll to start. Suppose in the same game, heads came up half the time, so you'd be down $59 after 10 flips. It doesn't matter whether you land on heads the first 5 times or the last 5 times or any other combination in between. The likeliest outcome of the 50-50 proposition will still leave you with $41 less in your pocket. So in Peter's flip game, the end result is always the same regardless if you lose heads or tails. And here is all the different factors out there that you can take into account with all of this. Now, say 10,000 people played 100 times each without assuming all players lands on heads exactly 50% of the time. This mimics what happens in real life, where outcomes often diverge dramatically from the mean. In that case, one lucky gambler would end up with $117 million and accrue more than 70% of the group's wealth, according to a natural simulation run by Jason Collins, the former head of behavioral economics for PwC in Australia, who has written extensively about Peter's research. The average expected payout pulled up by a lucky few would still be a hefty $16,000. But tellingly, over half the players wind up with less than $1. For most people, the series of bets is a disaster, Collins wrote. It looks good only on average, propped up by the extreme good luck or just a handful of players. While Peters employs plenty of high-level math to make his case, an experiment by a group of neuroscientists in Copenhagen also put his theory to the test. And in the lab, people changed their willingness to take risk when the circumstances changed in ways his equations anticipated, even when classical economic theory suggested that doing so would be considered irrational. There's a sense that Ergodicity economics can't possibly be right because it's too simple, said Oliver Holme, one of the experiment's designers. However, it made a very bold, falsifiable prediction that stood up, he said. Peters asserts his methods with free economics from thinking in terms of expected values over non-existent parallel universes and focuses on how people make decisions in this one. His theory also eliminates the need for the increasingly elaborate fudges economists use to explain away inconsistencies between their models and reality. And so, yes, and there is a statement by Ole Peters on this, who needs to comb his hair, by the way, just a little point of reference there. According to Peters, one of the fudges that happens to be the entire field of behavioral economics, which has won widespread acclaim, not to mention a couple Nobel Prizes over the past decade for explaining all the mind-bending ways people don't act rationally. Study says the field might be better explained as a symptom of economics' lack of formal rigor. It's no surprise that economists haven't quite embraced Peter's point of view. Numerous economic journals have rejected his paper on the basis that it simply wouldn't be of interest to their readers. There's that word simple again. There we go. Benjamin Golub, an economics professor at Harvard, is less charitable. He lambasted Peters for misunderstanding the economic theory behind decision making and says Peters' work ultimately amounts to little more than a straw man argument that solves a narrow set of problems with already had well-known solutions. This cartoon pretty much explains it there. Peters' thesis is that he has discovered a hidden assumption of economic theory that undermines its validity, but it's not there, he wrote in an email. Even if Peters wasn't confused about the content, Golub says he would still be off the mark, understanding that its remaining open problems are, that is, the part of the reason no expert takes him seriously. His theory has earned plenty of praise from heavyweights outside of economics. Taleb of Black Swan fame has promoted Peters' work on Twitter in his own scientific papers and has called his findings 100% correct. And explaining it on a doggy bag there. And former head of global financial strategies and Credit Suisse, Rick Buchstaber, a former risk manager at Bridgewater who helps draft the Volcker Rule while serving at SEC and U.S. Treasury, and Emmanuel Derman, pioneer of quantitative investing, have also supported Peters' research on ergodicity economics. His paper, which ultimately found a place in the prestigious Nature Physics journal, quickly became one of the most popular, and for what it's worth, his work has inspired a hard-boiled German-language thriller. The notion of utility may exist, but not in the way the psychologists and economists have modeled it. The results are monstrous. Well, the thing is, this makes a lot of assumptions here, with the coin flip thing. I understand this math with it, and it makes sense if you're putting your betting on things, but there's so much more complexity to it than the simple manner that he places there. And that's just it. There is irrationality to economics and how people react to the markets, but basically, sound economics is based off of the principles of taking risks in the marketplace in certain ways, but they're calculated risks. In other words, there's math involved that Peters is not considering at all, hence the calculation of risk. And not only that, but I believe that really this is foundational on sound. You can only have sound economics if you have sound money. And that is the crux of the problem. But essentially, what is sound economics with the assumption of sound money? And that is the free market. And that is you serve your fellow man by providing a good or service from which you can profit. Or you serve your fellow man by working in an establishment from which you can serve others as well as the company you work for. And then you take that money and the money that you earn, you pay for goods and services that you find of more benefit than the money that you have earned. Notice I use the word money because, yes, we are talking about money that is not is a depreciating asset, that is the dollar in the case of the United States of America, but insert your own currency there. But the money that is a currency that is used is fiat money. Many of us recognize sound money as being gold and silver. And really, until we get back into a sound, stable monetary situation, we are going to see the decline of economics. And this is why people like Peters are coming up with some of this stuff to try to explain this away, utilizing other sciences such as physics. But look at the word physics. It's essentially a physical science. We are studying what's going on with matter and the different types of things. And you can apply that to economics to a degree. Well, what is a hard asset? A hard asset is very, very much sought after in economic theory. hard asset, anything from a commodity of bread, beans, copper, and iron ore, land, real estate. Those are essentially hard assets. Well, I would add gold to that and silver, the metals that provide the stable foundation for money, as well, especially with silver as being a commodity and an industrial metal there. So the solution really is not even nearly as complex that a theoretical physicist would like to simplify the solution with this particular scenario, which, by the way, I really didn't see a solution in this. And that solution would upend 3 centuries of economic thought. What is the solution? I must have missed it in here. My guess is it sounds like it's a disparaging income with this thing, as far as you take a larger pool and how so many would do very well, that a lucky gambler would end up with 117 million and accrue more than 70% of the group's wealth. So this is an income redistribution problem.
March 15th was really the day when the world.
And his solution is to take that money and maybe potentially redistribute it. And what is that? That is another mathematician's solution as well. Andrew Yang would like to give universal basic income. And to me, without knowing anything about this guy, my guess is that's probably one of his solutions based off of his math as a theoretical physicist. And that is the absolute wrong solution. And by the way, it's not new at all. But I could be wrong on that. But regardless, no matter where we go, the real solution is free markets and sound money. That's right. So there you have it. So post your thoughts about this new modern economic theory. And now we know what is missing. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.